Hello and welcome to the Super Rugby Quarter Finals review, brought to you by DrivingMaul. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for rugby predictions and opinion. And yes, sorry, we've got some technical issues with YouTube, so we're not going to be live on YouTube tonight. I will put a recording up there later. So if you prefer watching on YouTube, you can still do that and it will still be there. But tonight we're live, on Twitter or Periscope, to be precise, and also on Facebook. So thank you. Please do leave messages on both. We'll get to see those and we'll go through that. Joining me this evening is the one, the only Shane. How are you doing, sir?
Good, thanks, Paul. How are you, mate?
I'm doing good, but I'm also having some... there we go. Let's get some things to actually can see you. There we go. People can see. That's good. You're not quite centred, but hey, if you just move yourself to the middle of the screen, then we'll be fabulous. So, we had a great weekend of rugby, didn't we?
We did. What a good way to start off the final series. And out of 4 games, 4 winners, 4 we say goodbye to for another year. And we got 4 teams that make up our top 4 for the year.
We do, and it's not only it's the top 4 from the ladder, are also the 4 that have gone through as well. So it's the 4 best sides. You could say going through. I know a whole bunch of people will say, "Oh, it's not fair," and blah blah blah. Whatever. No, the top 4 teams in the table have gone through. They're the 4 best sides by the rules that everyone agreed to start off with, and so all's fair in love and war and all that kind of stuff. So we kicked off on Friday night with a repeat of a game last weekend. It was the Hurricane. Actually, before we get on to that, our predictions were awful, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think we were off the chart a little bit, Paul.
Because I think we went Chiefs, Crusaders, Highlanders, and Lions, and in the end, so we were 2 from 4. As just a quick reminder, that our predictions aren't for your gambling. Please, don't blame us for any losses. That's entirely they're purely for prediction games. Like Super Brew. So do join actually DrivingMaul Super Brew. Prediction leagues are good fun. So Friday night, Hurricanes versus Chiefs, a repeat of the game from the previous weekend, except obviously the previous weekend it'd been Hamilton, where the Chiefs won. We were down in Wellington, and the Hurricanes won this by a single point. Makes it sound like a tight game.
Well, I think I got the point part right. I just didn't get the team right. In that prediction, but I think the Chiefs, I think they played their grand final the week before, didn't they? In Hamilton, going down to Wellington. Excuse my geography for all the Kiwis out there. 70 minutes in, you knew it was not going to be the Chiefs' night that Friday night.
And I don't know. When it comes down, when you look at it, you say, "Oh, it's 1 point." And one of the points I made in the post-match review I gave was that actually in this game, the Hurricanes scored all their points. All their tries they came from an interception by Julian Severe. He got another interception soon afterwards, and clearly had. Basically, the tank was empty because he emptied it on the first run. But the other 3 tries all came from set piece, from either from scrums or from lineouts. I think one of them actually there was perhaps 1 ruck, but basically, effectively, first phase ball off set piece. That's going to be a bit of concern because that's exactly what happened with Hurricanes beat the Blues. It was all off first phase ball, set piece ball. They're not showing that. They're not being that creative, are they? Once they after the coaching, the kind of the training ground moves are out the way.
Yeah, and I'll certainly have to give 10 for the athleticism of Julian Severe. The bus leaped out of the air and plucked it out, and I think Mackenzie had the right idea, just a poor execution. Set a lot of set pieces in their game this time. they out-chiefed the Chiefs, if it makes any sense, because the Chiefs are very good with their set pieces and their crash running. So they had a different game plan, didn't they, Paul, to the week before, where they were chasing the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously they got lucky to get the lead because of that interception. Grant Fox, one of the All Black selectors, come out and said that perhaps Damien McKenzie needs to improve his decision making. Andre in the live chat's gone and said DMAC showing again that he's not a 10. And Andre, I got to disagree with you on this one. I think he is a 10, but I don't. But yeah, he's a 10 that takes risks, and tonight or on Friday night he took one or two too many, that caused problems. But on the flip side of this, the Hurricanes made 7 clean breaks. The Chiefs made 25 clean breaks. So, which shows you that the Chiefs were creating opportunities, but they got themselves just too far behind and just couldn't catch up.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of turnover ball as well. I think certainly I'm with you, Paul. Mackenzie's a 10. And I think next year he'll step that up another couple of gears on the old Volvo. But, he'll, I guess the moral of the story is that it was just this, and they had obviously Mackenzie and a few other lads coming in, but they just, the execution of the skill levels there cost them, in the end, as we said, down the pub we watched this game and over a few burgers or two, we said that the Chiefs with their final 2 tries were just way too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jack's also saying DMAC is too risky to play for the All Blacks in a World Cup knockout match. Again, I disagree. I think that it's his first season at 10 at Super Rugby level. He's played all his age group rugby at 10, and that's where he's going to be. Andre, again, another comment in Twitter. He's gone. Chiefs were sadly outthought and outplayed by a fired-up Cane side. And yeah, you got to say that's very true. I mean, their line out, as you say, they got outdone at the set piece. The Chiefs lost 3 line-outs, but they lost 2 early on, and that definitely meant that they lost confidence in their line out, even though they only lost 1 more all game. And it also was a bit scrappy. But you're right, it's that turnovers piece. 17 turnovers by the Chiefs, 11 by the Hurricanes. And one of the things that I said in the preview last Thursday was that the breakdown was going to be an area to keep an eye on. But I said that from the point of view that I thought Sam Cane was going to dominate that, not that Evans, who I had pegged as more of an 8, was going to have an absolute blinder at the breakdown.
Yeah, the Chiefs are a good breakdown side, and I think they were definitely outplayed by the Hurricanes breakdown forwards. They were over anything like a rash, mate. It was just, the Chiefs played a different style of game. They threw the game plan book out compared to where they did in that first half last week, where they had that win, and they were a whole different team this week. And you think with engine room players like Sam Cane and Retallick and those sort of things, yeah, they'd be on top of the mauls, they'd be on top of the line-outs, and they'd be on top of the breakdowns, and that wasn't the case this time, was it?
No, it wasn't. And Andre's got another one. It's what happened to the informed Chiefs centres on Friday night. Well, Lau Mape also decided he was going to make up for Ardy Surveyor missing there at the breakdown, and he clattered into Charlie Nartai several times. I think trying to prove a point that just because Charlie's going overseas, that's not why Lau Mape's got the All Blacks jersey. I think trying to show that he is much more definitely the inform and only that jersey. by right, I think.
Well, I think Charlie tried hard on Friday night, and good on him. He got the last kick of the game as a sign of respect to his contribution to the Chiefs, and good luck to him where he moves on. But yeah, Lamapo was really, had a devastating impact for the Hurricanes on Friday night. Got to be said.
Yeah, as you say, it came down to the scoreboard pressure, and whilst it was a 1-point game, one of those tries to close it down was on 81 minutes, and Dave McKenzie had also scored another try on 79 minutes. So, of those 31 points, 14 came in the last 2 minutes of the game. And if you're 15 points behind with 2 minutes left, you're not going to score 3 times. Now, Congratulations to the Chiefs for scoring twice. But the Hurricanes knew that it was a more comfortable win than the scoreline suggests. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of people saying, the Hurricanes were the better team on the night in the whole. I mean, from Christian, Jack, and everyone else is saying that as well. And you got to agree they were fully deserved it. And from that, they now get to go down to Christchurch for a semi-final, which is perhaps a bit of a poison chalice.
Well, they go from the wind to probably a place where they wish they didn't have to go to in a knockout game to make the final. Certainly the Hurricanes are up for those battles, but I can't, and I'll say it at another time and another date, but if I could give you the gauge of how I feel right now, I'm not going past the boys from the Canterbury Plains.
Yeah, I mean, more likely to be a bit wet than down there than rather than windy. But I guess, moving on, just slightly before we move on to that game, please don't forget to share, like, retweet, all of that kind of stuff. It's all much appreciated. Thank you for showing the love for the show. So please do that. Moving on to that one. Crusaders 40, Sharks 10, 30-point win, and basically the Sharks perhaps a little bit. Perhaps the scoreline a bit harsh on them here. They and this is one of the ones you had to get in your seat early, didn't you? Because the Crusaders were out like a bullet out of a gun in this game.
Yeah, certainly the Bulls jumped out of the gate, and it's always the Crusader way. Work yourself into the game quickly, and out muscle and outplay the opponent in every facet of the game, and that's what they did without really. I've got to say, they only just got the 4-wheel drive out of the mud, but it was certainly not the brilliant Crusaders, but it was a good Crusaders performance. The Sharks at times just never looked like scoring and were very static in their phase play on many occasions inside and just outside that 22. Particularly in the second half, they just didn't look like scoring at all.
Yeah, it was a clinical display by the Crusaders. Came out early. The Sharks got their defence slightly wrong, and suddenly they were 10 points down. Richard Mo'unga leaving his kicking boots in the shed. Sorry, not 10 points down. They were 13 points down. There was actually a penalty in there as well. Suddenly it was 13-0, and it looked like, and that was after 12 minutes. So we're going at point a minute here in that opening period, and it looked like the Sharks could get absolutely thumped by a really big score. They sorted out their defensive lines and got themselves a try back as well, but it was about sorting out their defence really, because the Crusaders were just walking through them initially.
The turnovers, Paul, from the Sharks not that I felt that it cost them, because they really... And I love the Sharks, mate, and I give them all the credit in the world for making the finals, but the amount of errors they made, mate, was unbelievable. I think it was...
In that first quarter, definitely. After that, they managed to sort things out. But that first quarter was particularly poor. As Andre says, the Sharks weren't that bad after the first 20. They wouldn't have been happy at half time. Of course not. No, of course not. But you're right. And those turnovers, 8 by the Crusaders, which is, it's good to keep it down in single figures. 20 by the Sharks is a crazy high number. If you give up 20 turnovers, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And that led to a lot of the breaks. So Crusaders 22 clean breaks in this game to the Sharks 12. The Sharks had half the possession, half the territory, half the number of clean breaks, but they couldn't finish things off, as you've said, about with those errors. Both lineouts had some problems on the night. The Crusaders, amazingly, only 55% winning percentage on their lineout, which is awful for a side. The Sharks also lost 4, but they had 20, so they had they won 80% of theirs. Some pretty shocking set piece work.
Yeah, well, 55%. That's terrible for a side that obviously I think is very much the favourites and very much is renowned on its pride and work in the set pieces. I don't think weather was a factor or anything like that for the game, so it's, a few little rusty things. As I said, it wasn't the most brilliant performance I've ever seen from the Crusaders, I've seen many, to put you under the blankets and scare you, but it was certainly a good working performance, if you like. But everybody did their job and everybody worked. When they had to defend, they had to defend. When they were in attack, they attacked. And when they were in the middle of the park, everybody got the four-wheel drive out of the mud when they had to. We had the typical Crusaders thing of scoring around half-time, straight after so not only did they start well in the first half, they also got themselves a try straight after half-time. And once that was done, you were kind of like, yep, this one's been put to bed. They got a couple more tries, and kept the Sharks out in the second half. And as you say, the Sharks just struggled to make ground around that 20 around the 22 line mark. We're looking at this. Matt Todd had a decent game. 3 clean breaks as part of this with 35 metres running, which for a forward is impressive. And George Bridge as well. He's in some form at the moment, isn't he? He is. He was put in a very honest day's work for 80 minutes of rugby, if I could say so. He's just a very honest player, George Bridge. He's a speedster when he needs to, and I noticed that he played around the middle of the park as well, so he's not afraid to move around and help his mates. And Matt Todd, I've got to say also, Paul, and this is something we constantly said sitting down that table. We said that Todd had the best apprenticeship in world rugby, learning from Richie McCaw, and that's no word of a lie. He was enormous at the breakdown. I think we counted 3 or 4 turnovers alone just for not releasing from the Sharks. So that tells you his line speed's perfect, and he knows when to get the ball back, and help his mates get that ball further up the field. He's an immense talent.
He is. He also put in a big shift on defence as well. 14 tackles meant he was second highest for his team. Amazingly enough, Jack Goodhue topped the tackle count for the Crusaders on 16. Not as many as Paul on the Sharks, who put in 19 tackles and none missed, which is an amazing piece of work. But yeah, good Hugh. Perhaps not the flashy kind of game we've seen from him in this season, but yeah, a good chunk of work he got through.
Yeah, if you do 16 tackles in defence, you're putting in shift somewhere else, and naturally we want to see that running style of play that Goodhue has. But certainly for work rate around the park, you certainly couldn't fault that.
Yeah,
he's a talent.
He is a talent. And Andre makes a point here. Kicking seems to be making a comeback again. Winning teams are kicking more recently. Now, if we just run through the 4 games, just briefly, the Hurricanes 26 kicks from hand to the Chiefs 17. So, yep, it happened there. The Crusaders 23 kicks from hand to the 13 from the Sharks. Over in Sydney, 23 kicks from New South Wales, 14 from the Highlanders. So in all of these games, significantly more kicks by the home side, the winning side. The only side where that didn't really happen was actually over in Joburg, where we had 18 kicks from the Lions and 14 by the Jaguares. So yes, a couple more, but not a significant difference, unlike the other games where the home team kicked more and the home team also won the games this weekend.
Yeah, and I think with the games like the Jaguares and Lions games, both those sides love to keep the ball in hand and run for multiple phases and only really kick when they have to for territorial advantage.
Whereas we look at the teams like obviously the Waratahs have got Falau, who loves to get under a high ball. Dag Havali, both like that for the Crusaders. It's not surprising the Crusaders do that as well, and also the Hurricanes have got players that can get under that ball as well. So it's not a surprise actually those teams that we saw those teams kicking. Perhaps a little bit surprised that the Chiefs didn't kick so much less, but that's what was there. Something that we'll come into probably in our end of season review and probably also in our awards show. But Andre makes the point that there's a coaching point at the Sharks. Such a talented squad, they can't adjust to the game. And yeah, they have been the side I was expecting to challenge the Lions in the Africa Conference, and I'm just disappointed this season by never being at the races. Have they really?
No, I think they blew quite a few chances and were lucky to get in the finals, really, considering that they'd beaten 3 New Zealand sides out of 4. They just didn't perform well enough in our conference, which is a bit of a disappointment, really, and they didn't perform as well in their conference either. So they're a side I like to watch, Paul, very much so. So let's hope that they can build on some of their good results this year, take that as a positive, work on their negatives, and I'll be excited to see them run out in 2019, and good luck to them too.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the things that disappointment shows that we actually were expecting them to do better. It's not as saying that they're sort of putting them down or being anti them.
And they got the best logo in the competition too.
Ooh, not sure about that one, but we'll maybe we'll add that to our awards show and see what people think as to what the best logo in the competition is. I definitely think we'll have the best and worst jerseys. But Mr. Rugby World Cup, Sharks were very lucky to get into the finals period. It required a bit of a meltdown by the Rebels, but let's be honest, the Rebels had very much a front-loaded season and made hay while the sun shined, but really struggled after that. Now, if you'd like to support the Driving Maul, then please, you can obviously tell your friends all about it, but also if you want to support us monetarily, then you can become a Patreon of the show. It's in links in the in the title on Patreon, also on Twitter, and I'll put it in a comment on YouTube too. But please do go there. You can support us monetarily from as little as $1 a month. And if everyone who watches the show did that, then you know what, we'd be able to go full time and produce much better and much more content for you. So please do go and do that. So after we had the two New Zealand derbies out of the way, not New Zealand derby, sorry, the two games in New Zealand out of the way, the Crusaders wasn't, Sharks was the New Zealand derby, was it? We headed over to Sydney for the Tars versus the Highlanders, and the Tars with 37% possession, 35% territory, and yet they came away with the win. It's a pretty impressive performance by the Aussies.
Well, eventually, they were absolutely disgraceful in the first half, and that's not putting it lightly. Some of the basic skill errors, you don't lose possession after one or two phases, and that's virtually what they got people in the in the first half. It was like, I'm lost for an expression here, Paul. It's like going to the barbecue and finding that your steak is rare and you wanted it medium. and you take a big bite and you think, well, what's this? It was.
The halftime score was 6-23, and there were a lot of people on Twitter complaining about how poor and how bad the Waratahs were, and really putting the knife in at half time. It was a bit of a mess, and for a side that's got okay, fine, they're missing Hooper, who is the Wallabies captain, but you've still got Foley, Beale in there to be able to not be able to change their style of play on the hoof with such experience and so many caps on the pitch is really disappointing. That it has to wait until they go off the pitch and the coaches tell them what to do, doesn't it?
Well, I think Daryl Gibson got some teacups ready from the tea room, and I suppose it's the old English football expression: a few teacups got thrown at half time, with some choice language that not all of us perhaps want to hear, but need to probably hear it sometimes. And that's what was a totally different Tars side in the last half an hour of that game, let me tell you.
Yeah, and it was. This wasn't so much a game of two halves as a game of a half, 20 minutes and then 10 minutes, really, because all the Tars came out and managed to stop the Highlanders scoring in that second half, but also they didn't particularly look like scoring much themselves until Naholo decided to try and make two head-high tackles in the space of about 10 seconds and get himself yellow carded.
If you roll the tape 30 seconds before that, Voro intercepted a pass on his own line and ran 50 metres up the park, and then some quick phase play, and then you have those two very dangerous high tackles, and then I think he tried to then rip the ball out of the ruck illegally, and 3 infringements in the matter of 10 seconds, and Angus Gardner, who had a very good game, had no choice but to go to his pocket and put him away for 10.
Yeah, one of the great things this weekend was that we were not talking about the referees. Yes, we have probably got the most costly yellow card of the weekend, of the entire season here, as has happened. But we're not talking about referees. We're talking about the players, which is a fantastic thing. to be doing. And to be fair to the Tars, once that happened, Beale took in particular took the game by the scruff of the neck, and they scored three converted tries in that 10 minutes, 21 points, which put them into the lead. And at least two of those, from memory, came from them attacking down Nholo's wing as well.
Yeah, mate, when Beale's on song, he sings a mighty fine song. But when he did that, and I think once you saw the first try, I think it didn't take too long before there was a second one, and then a third. And I think two of them were for Bernard Foley and one to Israel Folau. So the big three in the back line said, all right, we've had enough. It's time to play now. It's time to get some points on the board. And, 21 points in 10 minutes with a man in the bin, very, very costly for the Highlanders. And you're right, Paul, it cost them their season. And I've got to say, in that last 25 minutes, some of the Tars bench came on, and I mentioned him in the preview show, Paddy Ryan, my good mate, a Wallaby himself. He started to do some things with the ball. Probably counted about 7 runs. So, they got busy, they got through their work, and by then it was up. The ball was in the Highlanders' court to try and salvage something. And
well, yes, your mate Paddy Ryan, not only did he maybe run with the ball a bit, but he also got himself yellow carded too.
He did. Yeah. And that was a right call too. Sorry, mate. You don't go for the ball in an offside position cynically like that.
I think you're being a bit nice, Paddy. You got through 3 runs for 5 metres, so perhaps a bit. But anyway, perhaps you're watching with some rose-tinted glasses. But hey, yes, he did pick up the yellow card, but hey, he was on the winning side, and that's kind of what matters. So yes, and then time ticking out, and the Highlanders just couldn't force that winning try, even when the Tars were down to 14 men in those last few minutes, and it was ended up being an ask too far to get to pull back those 7 points at the death.
Can I just? Sorry, Paul.
Of course you can.
I want to say, with no bias here, but very impassionately, it's still one of the gutsiest team performances I've seen all year from an Aussie side. And to say that Australian rugby did need that result is an understatement. It really, hopefully, will inspire Australian sides to say, look, we've got the Kiwi sides this week, we're going to have a real dig. And that's what I'd like to certainly see from our sides for next year.
And they need to have a real dig. And Mr. Rugby World Cup, if the Tars play 80 minutes like they did in the 40, like they did for the 40, they will win the comp. Yes, I think that's perhaps a little bit. I understand you're saying never say never there, Mr. Rugby World Cup, but I think you're being a little bit optimistic with that one.
I think so, yeah.
Because they have to travel to Joburg, where the Lions took on the Jaguares. Now, the Jaguares had the best of this early on, but they couldn't get across the whitewash and had to settle for penalties. And I think that was going to be a big difference between these two sides.
Yeah, and then chasing the game against the Lions. To their credit, they got within 4. But I think, as you mentioned last week, experience comes through in a lot of sides, and I think the Lions just had a little bit more experience and pulled away again.
Yeah, they did. And the Lions were made to put in a big shift, 167 tackles compared to 91 by the Jaguares. But even though the Jaguares made like 2/3 of the tackles, they missed as many as the Lions did. So only 75% of their tackles were made by the Jaguares. And yes, they were chasing the game from early on. Whilst they did get those two early penalties, the Lions came back with two tries. A really awful defensive read by the Jaguares player for the crossfield kick meant he ran straight past Combrink as Combrink caught it, and just Combrink had to walk over the line. I really don't know what he was thinking there. Another try on 15 minutes with Yanchis with his kicking boots on, and then Malcolm Marks making a good intercept just as the Jaguares were trying to break on or counter-attack from a kick. And suddenly it's 21 points, well, probably more than that because there's a penalty in there as well, isn't there? So it's 24 points to 6. And you've got to say the Jaguares had a lot of the play, had the opportunity, but just couldn't convert them into 5 and 7 points. They're only able to take threes.
And taking threes in South Africa is usually considered a good thing, but against attacking sides like the Lions, who only need a little bit of ball, and when they get a little bit of ball, they get a little bit of roll on, and so do their backs. So, it's the scoreboard pressure, as you mentioned earlier, Paul, and you don't want to be chasing games in Joburg or Cape Town or, in fact, any of the South African sides, because they can hurt you.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that intercept try, that probably was partially from the Jaguares trying to push it and making a pass that they really shouldn't have done, which lost them another 7. And it was 24-9 at half time. So the second half was probably I think I scored 20. No, actually, the second half was trying to think whether the Jaguares won the second half or not. Anyway, doesn't matter. But definitely the Lions didn't have to push it so much in the second half. You saw the Jaguares chasing it, and you saw them making errors, which has led to their 16 turnovers compared to 10 by the Lions. And as they chased, the more they chased the game, the more errors they made, and the Lions just managed to see it home. As you say, they did get back within 4, but as soon as they did, because that was on. Oops, just got under. Because that was on 49 minutes, but then you got Coetzee going over on 57 minutes soon afterwards to reopen that gap, and then Elson Yankees not only kicking the penalties, but also a nice drop goal to make it a 2-point game.
You don't see as many drop goals, do you, Paul, these days? So hopefully it's bringing back a fine old tradition that many South Africans have done in the past. So bring it back, boys. Bring it back. It was not the best drop kick I've ever seen, but it was effective enough.
It went over, and that's all that counts on the scoreboard. And that's his first one of the season, so perhaps he needs a bit more practice, as you say. It's one of those funny things. Drop goals sort of came back into character for a little while towards the end of Dan Carter's international career, but seemed to have sort of disappeared from, as you say, from the repertoire yet again. It would be nice to have it come back, though.
There's one drop goal I never want to be reminded about again in a certain World Cup final, Paul.
Well, yes, it was that. But I say since he's retired from the international team, you've not really seen that many of them.
No,
he was perhaps the last guy to sort of resurrect it from it. And the Jaguares had that wonderful run in mid-season, kicked off by their 4 wins in Australia and New Zealand, and then 3 more home wins to make it a run of 7 wins on the trot, which got themselves into the finals. But they didn't manage to win 1 game in South Africa all season. Finishing the season on 3 losses, which Andre admittedly did predict, and a lot of us said no, that was never going to happen. But Jaguares has shown they could win on the road, but they didn't manage to win any in South Africa all season, and that was their Achilles heel in this season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and they lost the last two by double digits. So, look, I hope they take that in and learn from it, because obviously they've become a vital clog now of the South African conference. They've made the finals. They now know what finals rugby union and Super Rugby is all about, and they'll certainly be remembered for a fantastic run and some entertaining rugby this year. And it's my hope, my impassioned please hope, that they come back in 2019 raring to go again and getting stuck in, and hopefully, challenging for those final spots again, with wins in South Africa next time.
Yeah, and it's something that we'll get onto when we review them as probably maybe wait to the next season preview. But Sanchez is moving to Europe, which is going to be a massive loss for them. The way they've messed around a bit with saying they're going to pick European players and then change their minds, they're not going to pick European players this season, but they said they will pick them next season, means that in the round to Rugby World Cup means that you've got to wonder as to whether the Jaguares can maintain their strength, or whether they will be or whether they'll leak players a few too many players that's over the off season, and we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, that is a concern. We do want them to come back and perform, because they've justified their place in the competition this season.
They have, and hasn't it been fantastic to watch? It has got a lot of fans enthralled. I certainly want to get my hands on a memento jersey, because love that orange jumper that they've got. They certainly wore their jumper and their heart on the sleeves, which I can certainly respect. They're a good bunch of lads. They play a very physical style of rugby, and it's been a real joy to watch. It just hasn't, the last three games proved maybe that their run had gone a little too far this time. Certainly, obviously they now can go into camp for the Rugby Championship, and let's hope that they can play some good competitive rugby against Australia and South Africa and New Zealand. We'll see how we go from there. But
yeah, and something that I've actually not I've not noticed, in fact that's something I need to catch up on and do some research on. But obviously, the Pumas coach resigned at the end of the June tour, so the Pumas will have a new coach for the Rugby Championship. I don't know who that is. I've not read what's happening there, but that's going to be a big part of that. Andre Oscar.
Did you say Ledesma's the favourite?
As I say, I don't know if it's been announced already or not. I've not seen. But my concern around Ledesma is this, as far as I'm aware, this season with the Jaguares is his first head coaching role. Before that, he was with the Wallabies as the forwards coach, and so you've got to say, look, with just one season of Super Rugby under his belt as a head coach, do you want to be throwing him straight away in as head coach of the Pumas? I thought that what would have been a good situation is for him to do this season, next season, and then take over after the Rugby World Cup. Taking over this far out from the Rugby World Cup, and then giving 4 years to the next Rugby World Cup, obviously. Taking over now, if he takes over now, they have a disastrous Rugby World Cup, then does he unfairly get sacked early without being given the proper 4 years to try and do it his way? That's my concern with him taking it. But he's had a very good season with Jaguares, so yeah, I can see why they would go for him. If I was him, I mean, it's difficult to say no to a job that isn't available every day. It's a job that comes up once once every 4 years, or if things are going well. And if someone else takes that role, does well at the Rugby World Cup, they could suddenly be in the role for 6 years, and he's out of it. So he's in a difficult situation where, if he's offered it, it's hard to say no. But I think he could do with another year of Super Rugby experience under his belt.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They had to experience what no Kiwi Aussie teams have ever had to do, and play 3 games in South Africa. It's tough. They've not had to do that. Yes, you're right. You're right. The New Zealand and Australian teams don't play 3 in South Africa. They play 2 games over there under the current setup. Under the old one, I'm not sure whether they. Okay, no, because there's always 5 teams. So anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, no, the Australian and New Zealand teams haven't had to do that this season.
Under the old system, just quickly as you mentioned it, from the previous 2 years, it depended on which Australasian conference you got in terms of your 5 games, and you'd play 3 on the trot in that country.
No, because I think you'd still only play, because the conferences were 4 teams in Africa, so you play those 4 teams. So you play 2 at home, 2 away. So under the 4 conference system, I think there's still, when you visited South Africa, you only played 2 games. When the South Africans came across to here, they played more.
They played 3.
Yeah,
when they came across.
Yeah, but when the New Zealand and Australia teams went to South Africa, I was thinking when we went back further than that, when you had the 5 South African teams in South Africa, that whether you would actually play all 5 teams, and whether you play 3 of them there and 2 of them at home, I'm not sure. Anyway, that's I was just trying to do it from memory. I'd have to go back and check my facts on that one. So Shane, let people know where they can have a chat with you actually between shows, and then after that I'll let everyone know what we're talking about on the Rugby Chat tomorrow night.
So I'm on at SchoolofMate, SCOOLM8 on Twitter. Come talk rugby.
Cool. So the show tomorrow night is the Rugby Chat. Some of the topics we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about actually our favourite moments from the Super Rugby quarter-finals. We'll also be talking about player eligibility rules for the Rugby World Cup after some of Charles Piutau's comments. We will also be talking about the Pacific Rugby Players Welfare thing that's been set up in France. I think it's like there's several hundred players, Pacific Rugby players playing overseas and their welfare. We'll also talk about the whole idea of cheating in rugby. But before we go, Mr. Rugby World Cup asks, would Super Rugby work if we all just played each other once? Right then, do you fancy a bit of a chat about Super Rugby format to finish?
Let's do it. Absolutely.
Okay then, right. So, would it work if we all played each other once? So let's right. Which games do the fans like? Now, in New Zealand, the fans like watching New Zealand derbies. In Australia, if you look at the turnout, again, the Australians, on the whole, like Australian derbies. So,
very much so.
So if you're only playing each other once, you're going to reduce the number of derby games, which is bad as far as fans in New Zealand and Australia are concerned. And one part of that is, the reason we like that is, our competitions that happen the level below Super Rugby, so the Midas 10 Cup and the NRC, have different teams than Super Rugby, basically. So it's different, and it's nice to see, and it's nice to have derbies when it's different. The problem is, over in South Africa, the Currie Cup has effectively the same teams as Super Rugby, plus a couple of extra ones in the Griquas and the Pumas. The Pumas are a South African side, not a Argentinian side, before anyone gets themselves confused. And the Cheetahs obviously in there as well from Pro, but they're up in Pro Rugby. The Kings are in the second division of the Currie Cup. So and Boolander, I think, was also part of the Premiership last year. Anyway, but the thing is that Western Province and the Stormers, I think it is.
Yep.
The Sharks and the Sharks, the Blue Bulls and the Bulls, the Golden Lions and the Lions, the Cheetahs and the Cheetahs, all are closely linked to each other. Now, the internationals...
And they're your traditional sides.
Yep, your traditional sides. And the internationals are obviously away with internationals, and a few players have flexi contracts like we saw in Australia, which means they can go play in Japan as well. But they get to see basically these derbies during the Currie Cup. So the whole beauty of Super Rugby in South Africa is that they're playing overseas teams. They're not playing each other. So for South Africa, they love the idea of playing overseas teams. In Australia and New Zealand, we love to play ourselves. So it would work great for South Africa, except for the travel. But it wouldn't work for New Zealand and Australian audiences. So what do you think, Shane? Would it work playing each other once?
It did in the past, in the early stages of Super Rugby, before Super Rugby expanded. That's just perhaps opinion here. It's very, very interesting. So it depends on the market. So in my case, as a fan, I watch all the Reds games, obviously. If I didn't, there would be something horribly wrong. I'd probably spend too much time at the getting popcorn or something. But I, as a fan, like to watch our sides play the South Africans, and I like to see our sides play each other. I know people say there's no benefit in, us going into Friday night or Saturday night fight night, which is what we refer to our derbies as, because it's a tussle in years past, which they've become more exciting the last couple of years and better skill level. But the fact is that for Australia and New Zealand, we love watching the derby games because there's a marketplace there. Obviously, it's doubled up in South Africa, where you have the traditional sides minus the Cheetahs, who are in pro rugby, play their derbies, but you've got a bit of interest with the Argentinian side in the conference system. So it really depends. I mean, I can see why some arguments, and I don't know who's leading the debate there, Paul, about the round robin system. Well, it's something for 2020, because 2020 is coming up, and again the format will be discussed, and where do we go? Who knows? So,
a couple of points to bring up. So that's from the fans' point of view. There are another couple of points of view we're going to have a look at this from. And one of those that you kind of brought up with Fight Night is from a player welfare point of view. So the ones that are driving it, actually, just rewind a second, sir. Andre goes, if I remember correctly, the Sharks played the Lions 6 times last year. Now, that's 6 times if you include the Super Rugby and the Currie Cup. If you also include what was the Vodacom Cup, and I think it's now Super Sports something or other, which is played at the same time as Super Rugby and is basically the level belief that, then you're probably ending up with more than 6 times, Andre. But yes, the Sharks play each other 3 times. Sharks and Lions play each other 3 times in Super Rugby. I think they then played each other home and away in the Currie Cup, and also in the finals of the Currie Cup as well. So if you got those 6 games plus, say, the Vodacom Cup ones, which is another couple of times, and you're up to sort of 8 times playing the same game, or the same teams playing each other, it gets a bit samey, and that's the problem in South Africa from a fan's point of view. Now, from a so there are 3 other angles we'll take this from. We'll talk about from a competition point of view, from a player player welfare fight night point of view, and then from a travel point of view as well. So on the fight night side of things, the thing that's driving it currently, and it's come out, Chris Boyd has come out and said this, Kieran Reid is another one, is that there are too many injuries caused by the intensity of derbies. Now, which I found is a kind of an interesting one, that why the derby games more intense and causing more injuries than the games against other countries, because the points count the same.
Well, if you look at the koala on my jumper, and you look at the Waratah of the New South Wales jumper, and you look at the history behind the rivalries, a bit like Auckland and Canterbury in New Zealand, which is I believe, Paul, a very traditional rivalry over there.
Nowadays that Auckland are so poor, it's not been such a rivalry recently. But yes, go on.
But you notice that the koala wants to play that Waratah. It means something to. It means gold jumpers are on the line. Same with the Waratahs when they play the Brumbies, or we play the Brumbies. We are the traditional 3 Super Rugby sides. The official traditional sides in New South Wales and Queensland. It means something to go to Brisbane or to go to Sydney or to go to Canberra or whatever to get in there and play Aussie rugby and show it. Now, national selectors and national coaches will be at the marketable games first. Particularly Checker. Checker will go to derbies because he wants to check on who's going to be wanting that Wallaby jumper more. So there's that market and element there. Yes, there are injuries, I suppose. That just goes with the physical nature of derbies. But yes, from player welfare, you certainly can understand that as well. They're very physical, and I'm sure, Paul, you'd agree the same thing happens in the Kiwi derbies as well.
Yeah, it does. I'm just a bit surprised why, but I guess it's about fighting for that international jumper, really, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Sorry, Paul. I do want to point out that every other game you play, whether you play a South African side or a Kiwi side, that gold jumper's still on the line. It's just what makes those derbies extra special.
Yep.
But I'll stop there.
So then, from a competition point of view, Mr. Rob Wilcock goes, only the top at best 8 teams should qualify for the finals. Period. Okay. Now, again, this is from a marketing point of view and a dollar point of view. If you don't have any finals games televised during the South Africa time zone, that's not going to help the TV revenue and the marketing. You have to have a game during that time zone, and so having one game guaranteed per country for at least at the quarterfinals level, that's had a good time for people to watch. I think is essential, and so that's why we have that conference system and why the first 3 seeds go to the conference winners. In the last few years, we've always ended up with the best 2 teams in the final, in the Hurricanes, the Lions, and the Crusaders. So I don't think there's been any particular complaints. This season, we may see the best 2 teams actually meet in the semi-finals, which is the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes. But still, I think that sacrifice is worth it to have those have finals games in the right time zones.
Yeah, and look, the last couple of years, obviously, we had the 4 conferences, and everybody that finished first got a home final, and I guess that's where people would argue the lopsidedness of the competition came through, because in one of those African conferences, they would bypass the New Zealand conference, or they would bypass the Australian conference and what have you, and that's where you had a lot of complaints naturally. So,
and there was a bunch of problems with the 4 conference system, the different size conferences, 3 qualifying from 2 South African conferences, 5 qualifying from the Australasia conferences. It was a mess. It was difficult to understand. Now though, it's simplified. You've got three systems. You've got three conferences. The top team from each one goes through and gets themselves a home quarter final, and the next best 5 teams go through. It's simple. It's easy. It's not. I'm not. The old system, I agree, was a bit of a mess and complicated, but we've moved on now, and I think we've got a simpler system, and I'm comfortable that this or something like this is what we should have had previously. Really.
Absolutely, and I think, whether we agree on which team should it be culled or not, that's for another time and another place, between Australian rugby fans and the like, and even the South Africans, which two sides they should have culled or not. We've got the right system in place now. It's a very much simplified system. 8 home, 4 home, 4 away games with your derbies. 2 home, 2 away against South Africa. 2 home, 2 away against New Zealand. You've got an 8-4-4 system, which was 6-5-4 for the last couple of years. We've moved on from that. We've got back to a system that is comfortable and easy to work out.
Yeah, no, very briefly, if we'd moved, the way I think they should have moved from last year to this year is gone for 3 conferences of 6, put the Jaguares into New Zealand, the Sunwolves into the Australian one with the Force, and left the 6 in South Africa. But hey, that's all water under the bridge. The final one then, if you're doing the round robin, is the travel factor. Is that Andre is saying that it would not be a factor for South African teams. It doesn't change anything for them. I'm sorry, but it does. It means that they would have to travel for 5 games in Australasia rather than 4. So it's an extra 1. And so it does create extra travel. So that's why I think the conference system is better for the travel on that one.
If, and only hypothetically, Paul, if you went back to the old system where everybody played each other once, home teams would naturally argue that you're going to play 7 home games instead of 8. So they're automatically losing 1 game in revenue.
Yep, there would only be 14 games rather than 16 that we have now. So we'd actually have to add more teams to get back up to 16 again. So yeah, there's that as well. Yeah, you don't get enough games for the season. Andre goes, why not have the Pro 14 system for Super Rugby? Oh my word! So the way the Pro 14 system works is that they have 2 conferences of 7. The 4 Irish teams are split into 2, so there's 2 in each one. There's 2 Welsh in each one. There's one Scottish in each one, 1 Irish in each one. 1 Italian in each one, and 1 South African in each one. They play everyone in their own conference twice. They play the derby games, and they play one in the other conference once. So having that one, I've not sat down and done the figures, but again, what I like to see is when I, as a season ticket holder for the Blues, I wanted to see all 4 other South African teams, all 4 other New Zealand teams, visit Eden Park and get to watch them. I didn't get to do that previously. I wouldn't get to see some of the teams. So, for my mind, actually the Pro 14 system would allow that. So maybe that would work. I'm not sure, but where you play all your derby ones, I'd have to sit down and have a look at that one. I haven't really thought that one through yet. So we've overrun. Unless you have any final points you want to make.
No, I don't know the European system very well, Paul. So I'm in no way, shape, or form in a place to comment. Other than to say that come the end of the Rugby World, probably in between the Rugby Championship and the World Cup next year, behind the scenes, there'll obviously need to be discussions on where we go to, because the next lot of rights are coming through for 2020 and beyond.
Well, so the current one runs until 2020, so the season after Super Rugby. So 2021 onwards is when it has to change.
So obviously that we're in a situation where we're going to let the conference systems run its place. Obviously, New Zealand will have their views, South Africa will have their views, Australia, well, we always have our views. So they'll have to come together, and obviously we shouldn't forget there is a team in Argentina and Japan as well, so we can't forget their views either.
And the 2021 ones is we're going to have expansion again. We're going to have a Pacific Island team. We're going to have another Argentine team. That's a discussion for another night. I'm afraid that's another long discussion as to how we expand Super Rugby next time, because it's going to be expanded whether people like it or not. We'll be back to say Hash Rugby Chat tomorrow night. I've already told you the topics there. On Wednesday night, we're going to talk the All Blacks edition. We'll talk about the Rugby World Cup. And we'll also talk about some comments made by Grant Fox calling for Damon McKenzie to make better choices. So we'll have a discussion about that as well, and a few other All Blacks topics. So join us for that. Don't forget, become a Patreon, support us. If everybody who watched this video gave us $1 a month, we would be able to go full time. So please do that, and hopefully we can go full time and bring in more high quality rugby content.